Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we're going to be reviewing a hand that I recently played in a tournament at Borgata. We are pretty shallow stacked. We have a nice 10 big blind stack. That is far from where you want to be, but is where we are. So, a player from middle position, a loose aggressive kid, he likes to min raise, and then they fold around to me in the small blind. I have Queen 6 of hearts, which again, is not really where you want to be. But we have Queen 6 suited. So in this spot, we have to ask ourselves, can we profitably defend for one big blind? Will we get more than 4,000 chips out of this pot that's going to be his 8 plus my 8, so 16, plus the 2,000 small blind, 17, 18, plus the 3,600 and the blinds, which is, or the antes, which is 19, 20, 21, 21,600. So will we get back more than 20% of this pot on average? And I think the answer is yes, even with a hand as bad as Queen 6 suited. In the past, many players thought that once you got down to 10 or 15 big blinds, that your only play was all in or fold. And because we've done some math since then, we realize now that that is not the case. You can defend and you can fight for pots. So I do elect to call. If I shove, I expect to get called a lot, so I don't really want to get it all in pre-flop with Queen 6 suited. All right, flop comes ace, jack, jack, 2 hearts. I decide to check, and then my opponent bets one big blind, 4,000 chips. So, how do we feel about this? In this scenario, if I go all in, what will my opponent call with? Well, he's for sure going to call with any ace or jack. If he has kings or queens, he's probably going to call with those as well. With the smaller pairs, he may actually fold. So that's a good thing. If he has a hand like king, queen, will he call with that? Probably not. What if he has king 10? Probably not. Queen 10, no. And then all the unpaired hands, no. So our real question here is, what portion of our opponent's range will bet the minimum on this flop and then fold to an all-in? If you think your opponent has various bet sizes here, meaning maybe he bets 8,000 with some hands or 12,000 with some hands and then 4,000 with other hands, then that's very telling. If we think he's betting 4,000 with only his nut hands, for example, well, then we have a very easy call. Nut hand being an ace or better, a hand that he's obviously never folding to a shove. And if we think he's betting 12,000 with, say, his bluffs, well, then we have a very easy all-in when he bets 12,000. If we think our opponent's going to be very balanced in this spot, only electing to choose one bet size, then I think we probably want to go all in, because I do think we will have some fold equity. If we do not think we have fold equity, we should certainly call, because notice that we're getting the right price to draw to our flush. We're going to get there about 1 in 5 times. And based on the pot odds, we need to win 1 in 6 times or 7 times, something like that. So because of that, I think we either need to shove or call. And versus a generic loose aggressive kid who I do think will bet his whole range or a very wide part of his range on this flop for one big blind, I do like going all in. But again, if this was a tighter player, I definitely think we should call, because a tight player is going to have a lot of big cards in his range. And notice big cards nail this flop. Whereas a loose aggressive kid could be raising a lot of hands that will not necessarily connect too well with the flop. And we may be able to get him off of some hands that perhaps he decided to bet poorly, like pocket 3s. So for all those reasons, I think going all in is fine. I guess I should mention again that when it comes to ace jack jack or ace queen queen or ace 10 10, something like that, it's very easy for me to be against top pair. If the board was instead king jack jack, I would much prefer going all in, because then, well, people raise lots of hands containing an ace, like our opponent actually had here, ace 4 suited. People are not raising hands like king 4 suited. So for that reason, they should have way more aces in their range than they do kings, queens, jacks, 10s, etc. And for that reason, you have to be very careful check raising on ace XX. Even a paired board like ace jack jack or even ace 2-2. That you have to be much more cautious on those boards compared to king XX or queen XX, etc. But I did decide to shove this one, and we do get it in slightly behind. And clearly, if I thought I had no fold equity, I should have called. And calling is okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with calling, getting very good odds to draw to your flush. So I do call, and we get there. So that's nice. If we did call the flop, I imagine it would have gone check, check on the turn. And then on the river, I think I would have made a very big bet. Because if I bet small he's probably going to call with a lot of his marginal pairs. Whereas if I bet big, he's probably going to only call with an ace or a jack, but I do think he could have an ace or a jack because I do think a lot of players would check behind on this flop. Or I'm sorry, on the turn with an ace or a jack, fearing the flush and also trying to get me to bluff. Especially once they min bet the flop, because when they min bet the flop, they keep me in with all sorts of king highs, gut shots, etc. I was asked by someone to always try to analyze what my opponent is doing and say if that was a good play or not. And I actually think my opponent played this hand great. He bet small on the flop, which allowed me to shove. If he bet larger, maybe I would not have shoved, or, maybe I would have shoved anyway. But I think the opponent played this hand pretty well. I'm fine with his raise. I think it's a little bit loose, but fine. And I do like his tiny bet on the flop. That puts me in a pretty bad spot with a lot of my range. So well played by my opponent. I want to thank you all for watching this video today. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. This has been Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com.